Hello, welcome to the Peace and Tell podcast. I'm Steph, as always, and we have Dr. Jenny and Jay, the loveologist, with us today, and we are going to discuss masturbation, one of my favorite topics. So, grab your toys, grab your favorite vid, and let's get started. The original question that I have to ask personally is, masturbation is weird, in quotations. How did we all come upon, pun intended, accidentally, how do we all come upon masturbation? Because I think it's different for everyone, and I think a lot of people feel like they were kind of like stigmatized, or like, oh, I did this, and or I didn't until I was X age, or I did it when I was blah. So I want to make sure that we cover all of those boundaries, and I'm more than happy to share my own stories. So I'd like to open it up to you, Dr. Jenny and Jay, and see kind of if our stories are similar. I imagine they are more similar than different.
Yeah, as far as this is Masturbation Month in May, so we thought we would talk about it tonight. And for me personally, I don't mind sharing. When I was a teen, I had sex a couple times when I was 16, and I remember thinking, what's the big deal? I didn't understand what the big deal was about sex, and all my friends were making a big deal about that they've had sex and all that. And I'm like, so I had sex finally, and I'm like, okay, so it didn't do anything for me. And it wasn't until I masturbated and did that for the first time that I said, oh, no wonder.
Figured it out.
Yeah.
That's what everyone's so excited about.
Yeah, I like sex. So, masturbation to me, obviously, I support it. It's a good thing. So, but I know it has mixed messages that the people who don't support you getting to know your body. So,
there's always going to be someone who doesn't support 90% of the things you do. It's funny because I actually thought that maybe our stories would be more alike, and I don't think that they are. Jay, let me see if your story matches mine more.
Well, I guess to back up a little bit, our bodies are just large vessels of sensations.
I'm dying to get to the pleasure mapping thing, because you mentioned it in past conversations, and I have so many questions, and so do our viewers. So
our bodies are just this large vessel of sensations that we've known about since we were little. I mean, if anyone has kids out there, then you've probably witnessed even your small little toddlers beginning to explore themselves and notice that there's certain parts on their body that stimulates a pleasure or an excitement or a source of comfort. You even have like the weird scientists like Freud and some of his minions, which there's a lot of me as a very inclusive and intersectional person. I have a lot of bones to pick with Freud's research as well too, but also that really got us understanding as well too about oral fixations and about the penis and different types of body sensations that people may have. So individuals start to explore themselves even as little kids. So for me, I began to explore my body very young. I began to really understand what my body could do and how different touches brought certain sensations very young, not necessarily for pleasure seeking, but just really out of spontaneity. Like I didn't know it was for pleasure. I just knew like this was great. This was a great
really
experience. And it took me until like maybe 12 or 13 or 14 when I had really great conversations with my mom to understand like for individuals that have vulvas, that the clitoris is a very great space for many, not all, but for many, to achieve, sexual satisfaction. And, that opened my eyes, because I also think for her, it was like, if you explored your body and knew your body, then it would make you more or less likely to go seek it from other people, as
Yeah.
well too. So she was my first sex educator. She really told me, like, this is it. So I got my first vibrator when I was around 14 or 15, which I know that's probably taboo for a lot of parents out there, but I did. I got my first vibrator when I was like, it was a little bullet, it was a little bullet. And I think, my mom and my aunts that came together, like, I have like a lot of aunts, they came together and they were like, if we provide this opportunity, then she'll love herself and she'll be able to focus on school, and also understand that she owned her pleasure. And that allowed me to understand my pleasure a bit more. It did. Thanks, Mom and aunties out there. I appreciate it.
Okay. So it's all very different then. I imagine that we would all have very similar-ish stories, and I can draw a little bit from both. But to kind of relate to Jay, also, I've never, ever, ever, still to this day, used a vibrator. I have extremely, extremely sensitive skin. I don't know if that would change anything, but it doesn't take much for me. Also, I am a hypersexual person, so it doesn't matter. And then to relate that back to you, Dr. Jenny, and your story is, I had my first orgasm memorably when I was young. And okay, as if sharing my first orgasm wasn't embarrassing, what I'm going to say is what I was most embarrassed by. I love androgynous looking people. Always have. David Bowie is my number one. Like, anyway. All my 3 out of, and questionably, I guess we'll say 2 out of my 4 first like crushes were gay. The other 2 probably experimented. Anyway, so my first thing was climbing. I loved climbing everything. I will just do whatever I can until I fall, and I will fall until I break something. So my first was, I was climbing and my husband's gonna probably cackling upstairs because he's heard this story. Climbing you have like the swing set, and they have the 2 little like things that meet up. I was, shimmying up one of those, and I was like, oh, whoa, hey, what is that? I loved climbing poles after that. I used to have the Presidential Fitness Awards, like in gym class. Pole climb was I was the fastest one up there every day. And then I just kind of started to masturbate on my own well before even having sex. Now, the 7-year-old swing set stuff was not masturbating actively, but in my teenage, I didn't lose my virginity until I was like 17, cusping 18. Just because I'm a very indecisive person. And at the time, I knew how to like pleasure myself and what I wanted and what I enjoyed. And to give too much information, as I always do, my first time, I was on top. Because I was like, I know what I like and where I like it and how I like it. So let's like figure this out. But it's very interesting because I thought that mine was going to be the most like conservative, and which it never is with me, but like I didn't realize that you had the family backing, you had the, friends and you had sex before you started.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I'm just climbing a pole thinking about the Labyrinth and David Bowie and just the codpiece alone. Come on. So what do we tell people then who either haven't masturbated or have but feel some sort of shame or discomfort or like, yeah, I did, or I don't know, maybe, or I got a dildo, or I had sex first and I never learned, because there are still people who have sex into their end of life and still have not experienced like an orgasm from someone else. So
Yeah.
I'm going to reverse the order, as I'm one to do again. Jay,
Yeah.
your advice for someone who, two advice. One, someone who has never had an orgasm with someone else and only can do it themselves. And there's a lot to unpack there. And then two, what do you do if you are trying to explore and you feel a little like weird or self-conscious about it?
Yeah. I think, pleasure attainment is great. I do think pleasure is a form of justice because it's a radical form of self-care. And I do think that exploring your body is a radical form of self-care because you're taking ownership of something that is yours that you can create on your own. So for the people out there that enjoy themselves and enjoy their body, maybe reframing that as well too, and saying that you're taking ownership over your body and your pleasure. Just being aware that the more that you know your body, the more that you're able to teach someone else about your body and what you enjoy too, instead of it leaving that up to somebody else to find out. And I think that's I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of individuals with vulvas, especially in heterosexual relationships, tend to have a lower percentage of orgasm attainment, because we have been taught, conditioned in society that we should depend on somebody else to provide that pleasure versus us being able to have some type of modicum of control over what that pleasure should be. So for y'all out there,
you don't know
control over your body and know what you like, and that is okay. I think for that can answer both of those questions. For people that are with someone and maybe like receive more pleasure from themselves than their partner, how are you communicating? Communicate that. Be able to instruct. That's great. Don't automatically assume that someone's going to come into your life and automatically know what turns you on. Have some modicum of control and be able to develop that communication where you can instruct them what to do. Same thing if you have shame about your body and about masturbation. That is very normal experience to have, especially how we are conditioned as a society, especially if you grew up very similarly to what I did. I grew up in a Southern Baptist church where we were taught that masturbation was a form of abuse and self-abuse. So being able to recondition that in your head, that being able to masturbate and know your body is a form of self-pleasure, gratification, and knowing yourself is a great way to counter some of that stuff.
Yeah,
very good.
Yeah.
So just to follow up, and I do want to hear your take too, Dr. Jenny, but if you're someone who is like, all right, I'm going to explore these things, and you were talking about like expressing the things that you enjoy to, your partner, however many partners are in that room, whatever it is. I think a lot of people, and I saw a comment, was you feel like there are two things. And this is just something I read earlier, and this is something that we've seen in some of the questions we get at, the Kiss and Tell, ask us at kissandtell.com, is if I say what I like to my partner or to whoever, if I say what I like, does it sound like I am over sexualized, or I am, one of them said the S word that I hate. I will say every word in the world, but I will say cunt, I will say all the things in the world. I have no problem with that. But the S word and the W word, don't like. Because I just feel like they're, anyway, that's a whole different tangent. How do you help or discuss those things with people who are like, I'm supposed to be like demure and like, and oh, he's the best thing I've ever had. And if I express myself, then he's gonna think I'm like promiscuous and I'm loose and like whatever it might be. How do you justify that for people who are in that position? Not that it needs to be justified, but what are the words of encouragement? Because my words of encouragement are, would you like to know how to, like, if someone's like, I want to eat a sandwich while we have sex. Cool, we can figure that out. But like, at least I know now that that you want to eat the sandwich, Costanza. Like, I know that now. But how, like, what are your words of encouragement for someone, male, female, whatever relationship? And just to be clear, I'm always going to say relationship as singular. I'm going to say woman because that's who we're speaking about. That is not because I see things singularly. It's just the list will take 4 years for me to get through. The whole podcast would be me listing different types of relationships and amounts of people and all those things. So what would you say to a woman who is like, I'm afraid to tell my man what I want because I think he's going to think that I'm, the 2 words I won't say, so loose?
Well, you're kind of contradicting them, because if she's afraid, then she's really not empowered. I mean, at least not completely.
Yeah.
Where this topic is concerned. So really, it's giving herself permission to enjoy this aspect of the relationship, that she is a part of the equation. It's not all one-sided. She's allowed to enjoy it. She's allowed to have an orgasm. So we would not. How would she say it, knowing she's coming into the relationship knowing herself well? So she wants to communicate that to her partner.
Yeah, I'm asking, that is a whole other thing to unpack, but I'm asking more based on what Jay was saying is, if you come into something, and she was saying it's very important to say like, yo, I like this. I want you to do that. This is where I want you to do it. This is how I want you to do it. Sometimes even people who masturbate and know what they like, how they like it, and what the surrounding, environment is, how do you justify, and I don't mean that as like needing proof, but like justice, like the scales. How do you justify being able to say that and still being respected or demure or not like, someone who's just doing it just because, I have experience. And you might not be, because I was a virgin. Mm-hmm. You found out after. Jay had a toy. Like, we all had such different things. So how do you justify talking to a partner about the things that you like without being judged? Because there is a label for that. There is a label for someone who's like, you know what? Smack my ass. I really like when you pull my hair. You know what? I would like for you to, sprinkle like glitter on me. I don't know. There's a kink for everybody, and I want to know all about them. But
you're answering the question of it. I mean, basically, you're saying it by saying the iMessage. I mean, the iMessage is the easiest way to answer it. I mean, you say, I want, I feel, I need. And make sure you emphasize I. It's about ownership. And as long as you're talking,
saying I.
Okay.
That's like, if you're not comfortable being like, I'm in a new relationship, and I do this.
What you're putting down. From what I'm hearing, you're asking, how is it that women can really release some of that sexual shame that comes along with being kinky. And and that is still going alongside with what Dr. Jenny said, being able to find a way to own that and those I messages. But also it is really kind of doing some mirror and some shadow work. Mirror work meaning to affirm yourself if it's consensual, safe, and sane. Then it is a positive form of sexual intimacy. But also doing some shadow work. Where is the stemming from? Where's the shame stemming from? Is it stemming from some type of background or experience, and being able to process that? And that may mean to process that with someone that is a psychotherapist. It may mean to process that very jointly with your partner as well too. If your partner also has that form of sexual shame where they're not welcoming to your kink, only because they want a vanilla form of intimacy because they've been conditioned to say that that is a more respectable version of intimacy.
Yeah, I guess you kind of distilled my question down into vanilla. So I feel like women are always trying to be like, oh, I'll do whatever you want. And I enjoy everything you do. And that's not true. So Dr. Jenny, if I was someone who came to you and was like, hey, I really, really, really want to incorporate X. Could be anything. Could be another person. Could be a toy. Could be spanking. Could be bubbles. Like, I don't know. Into our, sexual experience. How do I express that to my partner without causing like some sort of negative backlash? Because I feel like most of the things we do, we have a fear of negative backlash, right? So how would I express that in a way that's going to make me feel comfortable and also make my partner feel comfortable?
Well, if you can't express that, as we're talking here freely back and forth, if you can't do that with your partner, an easy way of doing it is to actually talk about it on a piece of paper. I mean, you can write them a note saying, I'm uncomfortable talking about this, so I thought it would be easier if we talk about it. I'm going to write it down and tell me your thoughts. Because
love that.
Yeah, I mean, I know it sounds.
No, it doesn't.
It helps because then it's on the paper. You know what I mean?
It's almost like texting.
And the other thing is never talking about it in the bedroom. Never talking about it before you're about to have your phone naked or whatnot. This isn't the time. You talk about over coffee. I mean, or you talk about it at dinner if you're alone. And also give yourself a time limit to talk about it. Because sometimes you can start talking about it and then it will start off really well. Hey, this is going good. And then all of a sudden it switches into something else, which isn't what you intended. So that's another thought. What about you, Jay? What do you think?
Yeah, I want to hear this.
I love that. I did everything that was mentioned, especially having a time limit as well too. Especially taking these conversations out of the bedroom. Really, I'm really big into energy, and your room is your sacred space. So being able to take arguments out of your bedroom because you don't want that to fester there. Being able to take, some other serious conversations, even like bills and stuff, out of the bedroom. Having a very structured place where that energy can be, where you can cleanse it so it's not all over the house. So when you're going to a room, you don't automatically feel that stuffiness. Have you ever been into a room where you felt like that stuffiness? There's been an argument that have ensued and you just feel it. You just feel it there.
Because where I'm like, I can't work here because something happened, or like I have friends who were living at houses and I'm like, something, I don't know. I don't feel good in here.
Very similar. That's why you don't want to have those conversations in the bedroom, because that it could provoke insecurity. The body has memory, not just the mind, but the body itself, the way it functions, has memories. And certain conversations can trigger muscle tightness, can trigger anxiety. And yeah, it may have even been a very cool conversation, but may have provoked some performance anxiety. And there you go. Automatically, when you enter in that space and sex is about to come about, that anxiety,
and
start to tense up.
Yeah, and to just circle back to what you were saying, just even bills. If we have a conversation in bed where if he's not pulling enough weight financially, or I'm handling all the bills, which is not the case in my relationship because I don't know anything about my bills. Like, I just am blissfully unaware because I think $20 is too much to spend for something. So I had to offload that. That's very anxious for me. But just being like, oh, I feel inferior because I am not making as much money, or oh, I feel inferior because I didn't clean the house today, or whatever it is. You're a stay-at-home mom and your only job is to blah, blah, blah. And that's where you have that conversation. I get it. When you go to bed and something like, and you're trying to have sex, you feel like you need to compensate for the other conversations you had in that room. Is that okay?
Yeah. That impacts intimacy, even when it comes to sex in general or masturbation, since we're really focused on masturbation today. Even when it comes to masturbation, you also want to realize that even negative self-talk impact your ability to please yourself. So you want to be mindful of even what energy you put in the air, even with solo play.
So we're almost out of time for tonight. I wanted to talk about our next podcast is June 7th at 7 p.m. And we have a guest, Dr. James Wadley. I'll put that out there. And we will be talking about men who kiss and don't tell, the lies that we tell ourselves about masculinity and its constructions. And we will discuss how race, sexual identity, and ability may impact intimacy in the relationship. So we have a lot to talk about. So our show will probably be longer than a half an hour. But trust me, you'll be happy.
Oh yeah, you're gonna be good.
I'm dying. I have a whole list. As always, I always have my notebook next to me, and I write down all of your questions and I ask them. But I really want to do a thing, Jay, and I know we can kind of like dip a toe in it, pleasure mapping. And I think maybe it would be interesting for maybe the two of us to have a bonus podcast of just I ask you questions about that pleasure mapping
and or also Dr. Jenny, because Dr. Jenny is also a pleasure mapping guru.
I know. I think it would be interesting to have, and again, put it in the comments. Send it to either Steph@kissandtellmagazine.com or ask us at kissandtellmagazine.com. I think it would be interesting to have different talks with different strokes for different folks and see what happens.
Yeah, I agree. And
because I'm always going to ask, I have a million questions.
Well, the great thing about pleasure mapping is it is as fun as it sounds. I mean, it's a good way of learning. I mean, so did we want to talk about it tonight, or are we going to talk about it another time?
We can talk about it today.
If you want to continue, I'm here.
Let's do it.
Yeah, go ahead. All right, it's up to you, Jay. I'm going to follow your lead.
Pleasure mapping. Oh my gosh.
Bonus.
Yeah.
Steph's bonus questions.
And this is great. This is such a great opportune topic because this is masturbation. May is masturbation month, and pleasure mapping is a form of self-discovery. Think of you're giving yourself a body scan, a scan of what you enjoy, and a scan that you could do solo, or you can do with partners or partners. It's really great. Some people start from their head, so their crown, all the way down to their feet. And and I like to, especially when I work with clients, and some of my clients watching you all will say, "Yep, that's exactly what she has me do." I start out especially with quadrants. So breaking the body down into particular quadrants and taking your time, setting those intentions, and also developing an inventory of what you may like. You may find out that behind your ear is the spot. Behind your ear is the space to be, and more pleasurable than, even for some people, even their clitoris. It is possible.
Yeah.
Take it away, Dr. Jenny.
Yeah, and adding on to what Jay has already said, it's getting to know your body. I mean, all three of us can say how we used to feel sexually, 10 years ago, and how we feel sexually today.
Just in the past year, in the things you
basically, and our body has changed. So, pleasure mapping is a way of relearning and unlearning, if you will. So, and it's an activity of intimacy too, because it's a way for you to connect with your partner and connect to yourself. What used to feel good to you at one time may not now. Now, as she said, now it is the ear for you. And you're like, whoa, where'd that come from? It's just the body has changed, it's altered. However, just to be clear, our body from head to toe can be sexually invigorated. Every part of the body can be touched and it can stimulate us. There isn't one part of it that doesn't react to being, touched, and especially if it's done in the right manner. How do we like it? Soft? You need more of a press, So that's really the part of doing that.
So does that kind of go back to just to circle back, like you being able to express what you need? Because for some people, the touch might be, oh, this is what I want. And other people, it's like, this is what I want. And other people, it's like, this is what I want. And other people, it's like, that's what I want.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's being intentional. And, when have you taken that time to intentionally seek out your pleasure? And pleasure mapping is that intentional space where you're seeking out your pleasure, not just to fall asleep, not just to blow off some steam, not just because you're lonely, not just
fall asleep. That's my go-to.
like that.
Can't sleep.
But you're seeking it out for the purpose of figuring out what feels good for you. So that's not only just touch, that's not only just sensation. You can also do that with different types of mediums. So some people like their tips of their fingernails gliding across their skin in different quadrants or directions, different pressures as well too. Some people like a washcloth, you could do it in the shower. Some people like a little, if they know that they like wax play, then they may utilize wax as well too in different spaces to figure out what is enjoyable. Some people love sensory wheels as well too, and that is a great way. So it's really up to you all, and really at the end of the day, this is a non-exhaustive way of figuring out your pleasure. You don't have to just do this one time and say like, that's it, I already know what feels good. Like Dr. Jenny said, like you may change over time, or different sensations may change over time. Different people's touches could be different. You may try it with one partner and it may not feel the same as somebody else.
Yep.
100%. I've even, it's so funny, I just had this conversation over the weekend. I was like, I like to cuddle now. Because I never liked it. I didn't like holding hands even. But now with my husband, I'm like I just, ugh. But I was never, like, if someone hugged me, I was like, so yeah, that relates very closely to what I've been thinking. But also, if you decide that you want to explore these things, and kind of going back to what you said earlier, Dr. Jenny, is so for Christmas, for example, my husband and I we sit back to back and wrap presents. So it's like we know we're getting presents, but we're not peeking.
Mm-hmm.
We're having an experience together that is like intimate, but not super intimate until the next day when it's intimate and we open each other up. And presents, one way or another. You were saying just kind of having a conversation, whether it's like writing a note or doing something like that. So with our last 4 minutes of our bonus 10, what kind of note would you suggest, or how would you suggest someone instigate that conversation with a partner? Like, hey, let's do this. We don't have to look each other in the eye. And especially, I hate to say this because it just makes me feel old, but for the younger generations who typically don't even like to call someone on the phone, how would you suggest that people handle that situation?
I mean, with a note? And what do you mean?
I mean, so if you're like, I want to have, like Dr. Jenny suggested that we, talk about this via like letters, but how do you kind of start that? Other than, hey, Dr. Jenny told me. Like, how do you be like, hey, I think, I feel this, you feel that. How do we express things? Because apparently we're not communicating face to face in a way that is beneficial or, satisfying for me, or I don't feel comfortable, no matter what adjective you use. How would you suggest that someone broaches that topic with their significant other, others, whatever?
Well, you can, if you want to do the note or the text, depending on, what
How would you initiate that though?
But you would say, I need to talk to you about something that's important to me. Yeah.
Oh.
I mean,
so you initiate the conversation about the text conversation with a text.
Right. And say it's easier for me to do it on a text, or it's easier for me to do it in a note, and see how they respond.
Interesting. Yeah. No, I love that. I've had conversations with my husband where I'm like, keep the lights off and don't like touch me. Let's just lay next to each other and talk, because I don't want to see you ugly cry. And I also want to just be able to say what I need to say. So Jay, same question. If you had to offer someone advice who's like, I don't know how to broach these topics. I heard Dr. Jenny say, you can write, you can text, you can do whatever. How do you initiate that?
I say that you can always broach it with a text. You can prime it with a conversation and say that it's coming. You can also have someone that's a mediator in the conversation, like a sexologist or someone that specializes in having difficult conversations. Depending on what it is, it could be fairly difficult to have. And being able to, again, be very intentional with the space that you're having these conversations at. And you're going to be more received in a space where you all haven't been arguing, that there's a calm moment, and you're not utilizing the conversation as ammunition to throw up something just as a bomb to prove your point.
What's very interesting that I just noticed based on our conversation is I just said in this hypothetical, like sometimes when I'm feeling super emotional and vulnerable, I will like say, like, lay in the bed next to me I don't want the lights on. I don't want you to touch me. But because I view that as a safe space where I can be comfortable and have those conversations. And you guys, this is like therapy for me every time we have a call. You guys should bill me, or I should bill you.
Well, no, you're safe place in the bed with the lights off.
Because I feel safe in that space.
Other people can do what you're suggesting, but it's knowing what you're comfortable. It's back to what we said earlier, it's knowing, it's learning. It's not only you learning what you're able to do, you're learning what your partner can do with you.
And is able to
you may be able to do the text and the note, but your partner can't. So it's a learning process.
Yeah. Because they might come in the room and be like, what's this? What do you want to talk about? And it's like, of me texting you was that like, I want to talk about it.
We're out of our extra 10 minutes. I mean, we could talk. We could talk about this all night.
Yeah, so why don't we take next roundtable and do how do I talk to a partner who is not interested in hearing me? So if I say, hey, let's text. I want to write you this little note. Here, and I do when I leave to go to my sister's, which I did this weekend, I'll put a note under my husband's pillow. So when he gets like, that's how I express things.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if he was like, what is this? I don't want to talk about it then. I want to like, how do we approach those things? And besides being like, oh, well, maybe that's not healthy, but you have to find a gap. So I think maybe next podcast is with Dr. Wadley, correct?
Yes, and then the one after that is June 21st.
Next roundtable, June 21st. I want to get all of the questions either steph@kissandtell.com, kissandtellmagazine.com. Sorry, I do that every time. Or ask us at kissandtellmagazine.com and ask me all your scenarios. Like, if I ask this and he says that, or she says that, or whatever, what do you want to ask? And how kind of advice do you want? Because I think that's something that's really interesting. And I think that the ladies here can really help unpack.
Well, thank you everybody for joining and all your questions. Keep them coming.
Yes.
And we'll see you June 7th.
June 7th.
Bye,
Bye, guys. See you soon.